There are studies out there that say that using generative AI technologies will increase your productivity of your organization anywhere from 15 to 40%. I'm very bullish on AI. I view AI as a human multiplier, but it is not a replacement for people.
Welcome to the Path to Owning It podcast by Provide, hosted by me, Corey Brown, a marketing leader at Provide with over a decade in supporting small businesses. Whether you're an aspiring or established founder, here you'll find tools and advice to start building your legacy and take your business to new heights. To help you achieve your entrepreneurial ambitions, each month we'll tap into our unparalleled network of industry experts who will join us on our quest to provide the answers to your most pressing questions. Like what you hear? Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you listen. Today, we're hearing from Joseph Hours, leader of the AI strategy practice at Centric Consulting. He is a technology futurist, passionate about driving innovation and digital transformation to his clients with speed and scale. Joseph has nearly 3 decades of experience in IT and management consulting across AI, automation, cloud platforms, DevOps, quality assurance, and agile development. Joseph, welcome to the show. We're very happy to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. And, today our topic's about navigating the AI revolution. It's something that everybody's hearing about, whether it be on the news, social media, our clients. So I think this episode's coming at a good time. Can we start off by just me asking, what considerations should small business owners have when deciding whether they should implement AI tools in their business?
Well, first of all, when it comes to small businesses, really things that you should consider, probably first and foremost, I tell all my clients, AI is not free and it's not cheap, right? So you have to look at the value that you're going to get from a particular AI tool or AI feature and determine if the cost is really worth it, because it can get really expensive really, really quickly. I've worked with organizations and I've seen their operating budgets balloon by 10% or more because they turn on this feature like Grammarly, and then they're buying a ChatGPT Plus subscription, and then they're buying a Microsoft Copilot subscription, and they all have overlapping capabilities. And it can really drive up the price, right? And that's just an example. Other examples are you buy tools, you use them for a day or two, and then you don't, and then you're locked into this subscription pattern where you're paying for tools that you're not really using or getting value out of. And so it can be very expensive. So first and foremost, got to start there, making sure that you're getting value out of it. The second thing I tell people is don't get distracted by the shiny bauble. Really look at what's going to help you move the needle for your business. What are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to, increase market penetration? Are you trying to reduce customer attrition? Are you just trying to reduce operational expenses? What are you trying to do? And then look for tools that are going to help you do that. And then set goals for what you think those tools are going to do relative to where your business is today. If you do those top 2 things alone, you're probably going to be in a good position to take advantage of AI. Now, there's a lot of governance, legal, regulatory, risk management that you have to factor along the way, but we'll probably get into those a little bit later in the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that's an important part of this as well. You mentioned moving the needle. Can you give us some examples of how AI tools can enhance productivity or efficiency within small businesses to help them move the needle?
Absolutely. So one way, and I say this full disclosure, right? Our firm is a Microsoft partner firm, love their products, but Microsoft Copilot is a great example. Microsoft Copilot is what we call a generative AI technology, which means it generates output for you based on the prompts that you give it. And it can do all kinds of great stuff from summarizing content to writing new content. And that's whether you're talking an HR policy or you're talking in a customized email or copy for a marketing campaign or a blog post. Lots of things that you can do there. And because it can do it in minutes versus hours and hours that it might take you to do manually, that's a huge time savings. And when you multiply that across your workforce, that's a significant productivity multiplier. There are studies out there that say that using generative AI technologies will increase your productivity of your organization anywhere from 15 to 40%.
Wow.
And I point out those 2 stats because I think it's important that one, there is this wide range of 15 to 40%. Like, why is that? When you dig into it, what you really find is that generative AI is what we call a skill leveler. I like to call it the +2 effect, which is using generative AI tools will give you effectively 2 years of experience in that skill that you're trying to do. If you've never written code before, it's like giving you 2 years of experience of writing code. It may not be the greatest code in the world. It may not be the prettiest. It may not be the most well architected, but it will probably be functional and probably get the job done. And that's regardless of, sort of your area of expertise, right? If you need to write blog posts, right, and make you as effective as somebody who's been doing it for a couple of years versus someone who's just starting out. So it's that +2 effect. So if you're just starting out at something, you're going to get that big 40% boost in productivity. If you've been in the field for 20 years and you're asking it to do something that you've been doing for 20 years, you're only going to get that 10 to 15% bump. Now, it's still a bump, right? But it's a much, much smaller bump. So I like the +2 sort of skill leveler analogy there as a way of increasing productivity. But there are other things that tools can do for you as well. They can automate certain tasks that immediately provide benefit. So I think there's tools like Calendly. There's several different AI calendar tools that will automatically do scheduling for you or give you a chat interface to allow your customers to chat with you and do automatic scheduling, as opposed to having to call, a receptionist or an office assistant to do that for you. You can do that, automatically. So lots of great tools from that perspective that drive productivity and efficiency in the organization.
What are some other of the most common AI tools currently used by small businesses that you've seen, and how do they impact their daily operations?
So the number one I probably see is either using ChatGPT Plus, buying that Plus subscription for their team, or using Gemini if they're already using G Suite products, because that tends to, come included.
Yeah.
Or they'll use Microsoft Copilot if they're already using M365 products. That's typically where we see a lot of folks start using tools. And I'll say this from a sanctioned business perspective, because we do run into quite a few cases where people are using AI tools in an unsanctioned capacity. I know earlier I mentioned Grammarly. By the way, I just started seeing their commercials on TV, which almost foster the idea of writing your homework for you as being an okay way of doing stuff. So we see people, who have access to these tools, but will still buy these subscriptions and use them in their job, right? Particularly in the knowledge worker space. They'll buy these subscriptions to these other tools and will use them because they find it beneficial for them as an individual. So those are some of the most common ones that we see, followed by, I would say, like a lot of calendar meeting setting type tools that you'll see in there. And then marketing automation tools as well. These tools will do everything from crafting your campaign to crafting your message to tailoring the message for each recipient that you might have, which is only something you could do at scale with AI. Prior to that, you always had to do basically like a form letter, right? A form email or a form template newsletter that you send out. Now you can customize them on an individual basis because of AI. And that's typically where we see a lot of small businesses start.
Yeah. And, with all of these options out there, I'm sure our audience kind of has their mind just whirling at all the options that they could start to automate within their business. You mentioned earlier, it's not free, it's not cheap. Do you believe that initial investment in AI tools is justified for small businesses?
Yes, when done with focus and vision. So I've mentioned a lot of tools already. I don't recommend that you just go out and start doing this and implementing this. You really need to have, what am I trying to achieve here? If I want a marketing automation tool, then you need to have a marketing goal in mind that you think it can achieve over traditional marketing tools, because there is a premium additional cost to using these features, right? And it might be 10 or 20 bucks per 1,000 additional emails. It just depends on the tool. I'm not sure. But when you're looking at it from that perspective, it's like, okay, am I going to get that additional value out of using this tool or feature? And if I'm not sure, then I probably shouldn't start there. I should start in places where I can be more sure of what I'm going to get from a return on investment perspective. So easy tools are office productivity tools, right? Whether you're using Gemini and G Suite or using M365 Copilot, or you're using ChatGPT Plus or Claude. Claude is made by Anthropic. You can do similar things with generative AI. You can use those tools to do a lot of things that you're doing in your office today. And that's everything from, writing emails or writing policies, those types of things. Those are great opportunities to look at, to get started with, that affect everybody in your organization. The other thing that you should probably look at is, what business management software are you using for your industry, right? I think for veterinarians, I think there's Pet Desk I think they're starting to offer some AI features. Different industries have different types of features that might be available to them. Look and see what they're offering and what value they might bring to the organization as well. But you do have to always ask yourself, okay, if I buy this, am I going to make that additional money in profit? Not just revenue, right? But, in profit. If I pay $25,000 for this it's not enough to get $25,000 in revenue. I need $25,000 in profit, which might mean I need $100,000 in revenue in order to get there. Just picking those numbers, you need to figure out what those KPIs are for your particular business, and then ask yourself whether or not you're going to do it. And then see if there's a way to do sort of a staggered investment to get started, to see if it's actually going to move the needle, because sometimes you just have an idea that it might, and you don't want to necessarily go all in on the investment if you're not 100% sure that it can. So see if there's a way of staggering your investment and rolling it out slowly to see if it's going to pan out.
Yeah, Joseph, that's great advice. I'm curious how business owners would, like, how long would you suggest that they try out some of these tools, before they see that return on investment that you've been talking about? Is there a certain amount of time? Is there a certain moment that they'll realize, hey, this is really working out for me? Or, you know what, we tried this didn't work. Let's do something else. What does that look like?
Great question. I'm going to give the consulting answer is it depends.
Yeah.
It depends on the tool you want and what you're looking for. So for like a marketing campaign, typically those have fixed duration goals. You should probably invest for, that duration or do a limited test campaign. And that might be 6 to 8 weeks, right? It might be 4 weeks, depending on what your business is. But for other types of tools like, Copilot tools and ChatGPT Plus, you have to figure out how am I going to measure internal organizational productivity before I can determine whether or not these tools are going to provide a lift. And then you have to overcome the learning curve issue, right? And this is something I can't state strong enough. You have to train people on how to use these tools in their specific role in order for them to adopt them, because otherwise they're going to use them for a day or two and they're going to abandon them, as I pointed out, earlier. So how is a person in HR going to use Copilot in Outlook, or how are they going to use it inside of Word to draft policies? And then making sure they get the right training for that role to make sure that they're adopting these tools. Then you can monitor productivity. And typically that's a pretty quick turnaround. Typically you'll see adoption spike and then it will trail off to some sort of plateau when people figure out, okay, it's great at this, not so great at this, right? So I'm going to use it 75% of the time, and it's going to save me 25% of my workload. That usually takes a month or two to sort of, materialize there before you, sort of see that. So it's really going to be tool specific, right? Either you have a specific objective with the tool that you think you can achieve that's time bound, or it's an open-ended and you're going to have to time box it. And you might want to do pilot group before you do everybody in the organization at once. Sometimes it is just an all or nothing thing too, in which case you really should train everybody to try and maximize your potential impact. M365 Copilot is almost one of those all or nothing things for small businesses.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a good point. I worked in a privately owned dental practice for over a decade, and there's always new software that's coming out, right? So training was such a huge thing, and oftentimes we just ended up learning as we did it, which was unfortunate. So I'm just curious, what kind of resources are available for small business owners who are new to AI that do want to train their staff and get them set up for success?
Well, this is a struggle of the industry across the board. This is not just a small business issue. This is a large enterprise issue. It is an individual sort of issue. There are lots of training resources out there. And I'll be honest, 99% of them just aren't that good. They're basic generative AI prompt engineering, or they want to take you down a technical path to be a data scientist, which we don't want to be, right? We just want to know, how can we do something to do our job better? Just give me the bare bolts, basics here in order to be successful. And those training opportunities are few and far between. Oftentimes we find people having to create their own internal training. And that typically starts with using the tools yourself and becoming comfortable with them and figuring out how they can be used, and then bringing other people along and sort of doing that slow growth perspective. Once you find resources that are good for you, right, obviously disseminate them amongst everybody else in the organization. And that can be everywhere from YouTube videos to TikTok videos. TikTok is up and coming to be a great place for people to learn 30-second snippets of how to do something with a particular tool.
Yeah.
And there are some really good, folks out there. I would be careful of people who are posting a new video every day on how to do something, because typically they're only covering those tools in a superficial level. You want to look at somebody who's taking a little bit of time to digest what the new and latest features are. Classic example for folks who may not know, ChatGPT came out with a new model called the O1 model, and they came out with O1 Preview and O1 Mini. If you're a ChatGPT Plus subscriber, you had access to them. And they came out with that, and immediately, like within hours, people are putting out videos on, this is how to use this model. Well, I can tell you from experience, you did not learn how to use that model with enough veracity to be really reliable or even useful in an hour and put together content for video to be produced. Human learning and adaptation just doesn't happen that quickly. And for the number of videos that were created within hours of that release, I'm like, they're almost like troll farming, educational videos,
Yeah.
right? Just capitalizing on the hype to get views, but they really don't offer any substance. So find experts who take a couple of days to a week to put out content on new features. They tend to be more thorough. They tend to talk about the true ins and outs of a particular feature or a particular tool in much more detail. Those are much, much more worthwhile in terms of following and, doing that self-learning. But really the best source right now happens to be, YouTube, corporate blogs when they release features. Sometimes they'll release videos around it. Just be careful the ones that are the sci-fi hype. It's hard to avoid because all content is marketing to some degree.
Right.
So you want to, make sure that you're properly skeptical of claims, but really look at what the value could be and figure out, okay, this is how I can use this tool and I can do this myself.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I'm curious, right before we go to break, I'd love like a real world example of how our audience can use this. So let's say that I'm a healthcare practice owner or a small business owner. I'm having trouble with my customer attrition rate. What are some things that I can do using AI tools to help me with that?
Great question. Hopefully you're using some sort of customer management system. Hopefully they have features built in around predictive analytics that you can leverage for this particular problem, because that's actually what it calls for. And if they don't, then you are stuck with hiring somebody or trying to do predictive analytics on your own, which is, I want to be careful because there is a whole industry of data scientists who do AI-based predictive analytics, which is very different than statistical analytics, or business intelligence reporting, because some of that is just basic statistics, right? Can I categorize these customers? Are there certain things that I see? But what AI is really, really good is at finding the patterns that are inherently obvious in your data in order to help you predict why customers, are leaving the practice or your business. And really what you're trying to find in there is, what are the things I'm unaware of? So you mentioned, healthcare provider. This sounds crazy, right? But if you have the data and it's like, hey, after somebody sees this particular person in the office 4 times, for some reason they're leaving, right? May or may not be related to that person, but it might be data that becomes interesting of, okay, well, why are they leaving at this point, right? If everybody else is leaving after, 15 or 20 years, why is everybody leaving after 4 visits, right? Which might be, in a couple of months in a healthcare practice, right?
Right.
There's something about that person, putting them off, right? You don't know. So you could look at that. You can use sentiment analysis on surveys that you send out. So send out people like, why did you leave the practice? We'd like the chance to make ourselves better. Can you answer these couple of questions, right? And then do sentiment analysis on the remarks that they make, in addition to standard survey analysis on this was good, this was bad, place was clean, place is easy to get to, easy to schedule. Do sentiment analysis on the comments, because that may be far more revealing than the scores they fill out in the surveys themselves. Those are a couple of ways in which folks can start looking at, why are customers leaving the organization? What are those triggers? What's really, really going on? And it's just about digging into the data. But before we head into break, I just want to say, data is the new currency in the digital world. Any piece of data that you can mine or collect, you should. It costs fractions of a penny to store the data, but it could be invaluable in the future in terms of being unlocked through AI potential tools. So if you have the ability to collect it, collect that data. That even goes down to, this is going to sound weird, right? But if you're looking at customer attrition, it might be that people have an unlucky habit of scheduling appointments that happen to go through 2 or 3 school zones in order to get to you. And you might not know that because customer attrition might pick up during the school year and it might drop off during the summer. And it might be something as simple as that. But if you don't know what the school years are and you don't have that data available, you'll never pick up on that pattern because it'll never be made available to, AI. And I use that as an extreme sort of hyperbolic example just to show that the amount of data that could be important to you is far bigger than most people realize. But definitely start with the data that you do have. Don't put it off because you're like, oh, I don't have that data. Well, most people don't have that data, but look at the data you do have, act on it, and then look how you can augment your data with additional data. There are data brokers out there who specialize in doing this. We have a client that buys data from Google about the number of miles that people drive in a given week in various zip codes. And what they found is they're in the business of repairing vehicles that are damaged. And prior to COVID, whenever there were bad storms that came through, obviously their business went up. After COVID, because they were tracking this, what they found is that their business declined because everybody switched to a hybrid remote sort of work environment. So people are more likely to stay home in inclement weather than they are to push their luck in inclement weather. And that actually caused business to go the opposite direction. So what used to be a predictor now became a detractor of business revenue for them. But they only found that out because they were tracking things from an AI perspective.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing those tidbits with us. That's great advice. We've discussed ways AI tools can improve small business operations, but when we return, I'd like to dive into tool integration techniques and the future of AI tools for small business owners. We'll be back with more right after this. Ready to take your practice to the next level? Meet the Provide Card, the credit card built specifically for healthcare practice owners. Available in addition to your Provide practice loan, with the Provide Card, you'll be transported to a world of new opportunities for your practice, where you can access the spending power you need to build your legacy. You can earn rewards on all purchases, all the time, with no rotating categories and no point expiration. At Provide, we're creating the future of personalized banking for healthcare practice owners. To learn how to apply for the card that makes your purchases go the extra mile, contact your Provide representative or visit getprovide.com/providecard for more information, including rewards terms and conditions. I'm Corey Brown, and this is Provide's The Path to Owning It podcast. We're back with Joseph Hours, leader of the AI strategy practice at Centric Consulting, to talk more about integrating AI tools into your small business. Joseph, can you discuss how AI tools can help small businesses begin to scale their operations?
Absolutely. So I view AI as a human multiplier. I love AI. I'm very bullish on AI, if you will, but it is not a replacement for people. So I want to first and foremost say that. But it is a force multiplier for folks. And so in using these AI tools, you can do everything from automating customer service. There are some routine customer service requests. We've actually already seen some of this happen with standard chatbots that you can buy that provide 24/7 sort of presence on the web, if you will. But the AI chatbots are becoming more sophisticated, actually integrating with your systems to accomplish tasks that you might need an actual person to follow through. So not just providing information from a knowledge base, not just providing an update on an order status, but going so far as, modifying orders after hours, providing real-time status updates, et cetera. You can also do marketing at scale. In the first half of the podcast here, we talked about how AI could do tailored emails by individual. I've actually seen organizations go out and pull down press releases. This was an organization that does business to business type sales. They were pulling down press releases from other businesses and incorporating information from that to say, hey, our goods and services will help you in this particular space. And they were customizing those emails on a one-on-one basis. You could only do that with AI. You can do things, things that you used to do around like inventory management, prediction, right? These are all my spreadsheets. I've got stuff depleting at this rate. I've got my sales pipeline looks like this. AI is great at figuring out where you're at. When do you need to order new stuff? How quickly you're going to run out of stuff? It's great at helping you figure out that type of thing. We're actually seeing it in the talent acquisition department. A lot of AI usage here, I'll say both by people who are applying for jobs, but also by HR departments who are also, screening these individuals, right? Using AI tools as a part of a, HRM application to go through and say, hey, this person meets the qualifications or they don't, right? A more robust intelligence around, is this candidate qualified? To helping interviewers come up with what are good interview questions for this person and helping to make, interviewers consistent. If you have more than one person interviewing folks for a role, having that list of questions is helpful in standardizing the way people do interviews. So those are just some examples that you can use AI for. Anywhere you have a person who's engaged doing a task, one, can it be automated? If they're engaged in conversation or interfacing with people, two, can that be automated? Anywhere you're having interactions with people, there may be an opportunity to make them more effective and efficient at what they're doing with these tools.
Is there anything that entrepreneurs should be keeping in mind when planning for growth when it comes to AI?
Yeah, when it comes to adopting AI, first of all, not everybody is willing to adopt AI. There are folks at the lower end of the skill capability, lower end of the weight spectrum, are very, very tepid when it comes to AI because it's the fear of, hey, if I start using AI, it's actually going to take my job. The reality is it couldn't be further from the truth for them, right? If they embrace AI, they're going to become more valuable to the organization because they're completing and doing so much more, and they're developing specialized skills and using these tools. They're actually going to be more valuable. So helping them to see that AI is there to help them and not to replace them is the number one thing that you have to do if you want people to adopt and use these tools. The second thing I'll say is be prepared for the growth that may come for this. Be ready to scale when you need to scale, because if you are successful in achieving some of your objectives, can you actually handle the business? It's a valid question to ask and to be prepared for. You may not have to do anything about it, but you might want to at least do the tabletop exercise of thinking about it. And the final thing that people should keep in mind is AI does need to be managed. There are risks with using AI. We see this all the time. Everything from the attorney in Michigan who used ChatGPT to write a court brief that cited court cases that didn't actually exist.
Wow.
And that created its own sort of issues for that lawyer. Fortunately, they just got slapped with a fine. But now everybody who submits evidence and briefs with the court have to sign a sworn statement that they have reviewed any AI-generated legal material before submitting to the court. We've had examples like that. I'm going to use two big company examples just to talk about the extremes here.
Yeah.
Uber, developing self-driving cars, they had a tragic accident where one of their cars actually struck and killed a pedestrian. This is a company that is well steeped in AI. They've got data scientists who know what they're doing, but they didn't employ governance around things like training data selection. And if you're in the AI space, you'll know what that means. But what it really means is when you're building a model, you have to train it on some data. And in this case, they had a lot of images of pedestrians in crosswalks. And AI actually picked up on the fact that crosswalk was a key determining factor on whether or not an object was a pedestrian or not. And this particular pedestrian that was struck and killed was in an unmarked crosswalk. And so when you're using AI tools, you need governance around how should these tools be used? How should we be developing them? How should we be deploying them? That's an extreme example on one end. But there's also a user example as well. So Rite Aid Discount Drugstore, if folks are familiar with that, they were implementing facial recognition technology kind of like a casino does, right? We've got shoplifters. We don't want them coming in our stores. So we're going to keep a database of these folks. When they come into a store, we're going to detect them. We're going to ask associates to escort them out. And they're not going to be allowed to shop here. The problem is they had associates who were breaking out their personal phones. They were taking pictures of security monitors, or they were, I call them sort of the subtle, I don't want to be confrontational picture where you're walking by an aisle taking a picture. Both of those images come across a little blurry. They would upload them to their system. When their system would come back with a match and a score, they never told anybody what that meant. They're just like, oh, it looks like a match, so you're not allowed to shop here. This went on for a period of time that it escalated to the point that they were discriminating against folks on social economic scales. Part of it was their customer base. Part of it was their, what they were doing. But the federal government had to step in, and to avoid criminal prosecution, Rite Aid had to agree to a consent decree to not use facial recognition technology for the next 5 years.
Wow.
So on the user side, they didn't have governance around training and usage. On the Uber side, they didn't have proper governance around, AI model feature and selection. So when entrepreneurs are thinking about where can we use AI, we have to think about, okay, who's going to be using this? What's the potential impact to customers? What's the potential impact to us? Are we making financial decisions based on this? Are we making customer selection decisions based on this? And if so, you need to at least go through the exercise and figure out, okay, well, what if it's wrong? What does that mean for us? How do we need to respond? Are there legal implications? Are there regulatory implications? Are there industry association guidelines that we have to follow? And what does that mean for us? And in some cases, you might need formal policies to say you can only use this technology in these circumstances and not these. In other cases, it might be, well, we're just going to keep an eye on it. If something happens, here's how we're going to respond to the situation. So the risk management piece is not something that can be overlooked. So you have to manage the risk appropriately. You have to manage adoption in addition to what we talked earlier about value. Yeah. Bringing those three things together is the sweet spot.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. We've been talking a lot about the benefits of AI, and I think it's important to hear, the legal and ethical considerations as well. So thank you for sharing that. What are some other common challenges small business owners face when integrating these AI tools, and how do you best suggest they overcome them?
Probably
besides training.
besides training. Yeah. Probably the next thing that folks run into is they don't truly understand AI's capabilities and limitations. And that leads into a couple of problems. One, they have unrealistic expectations over what AI is going to do, and they're either let down or it's misused in some way unintentionally, but then something negative would happen. The other thing you run into is you might fall for the marketing hype, right? Oh, this is AI related when it's just traditional automation under the covers. We see this a lot in the marketing space. People say this is AI marketing. Here's your list. You tell us what frequency you want to send it out in, and AI will determine when to send those out on. Well, those types of scheduling, so on schedule when best open for emails to be best open clicked, is traditional marketing automation that doesn't require AI to do. But people will slap AI as a label on there. So being bedazzled sort of by the shiny bauble is definitely a risk. Not understanding the capabilities and limitations, so you don't truly know what you're getting, is a challenge here. Fear is another impediment that folks will run into, not only from the person who is saying, hey, we should use this particular tool or feature, but potentially by the users themselves, right? We talked about that a little bit earlier. So those are some of the other things that you should look at. The other thing, probably a lesser, but maybe a more important thing, if you're using like a bigger platform like Salesforce has lots of AI features, a part of their Einstein Studio in there. You may not have enough data, and your data may not be good enough to actually give you the predictive type things that you might get out of there to actually be useful to your organization. And it may not actually mean that your data is bad. You just might not have enough, right? If you only have a couple of hundred customers, doing AI predictions based on that is going to be very, very difficult. AI works with data at scale. The more data you have, the more massive the scale, the better AI can be, over time. So there is a sort of sweet spot of being too small of a data set to be effective and then moving into larger data sets. So that's probably the other thing that folks should look for.
Yeah. I would imagine too, you hinted at this earlier about subscriptions, and I'm just thinking of my own subscriptions. I probably have some overlap somewhere, right? Do you recommend that small business owners who do adopt these tools, should they do an audit of sorts every so often to make sure they're really like not doubling down on some things that they already have somewhere else?
100%. You should always look at what tools that you have in your organization and whether or not they're still being used. And this is not just an AI thing, right?
Yeah.
There are lots of organizations that can be saddled with legacy subscriptions if they go unchecked, right? Are people still using them? And is it still worth license fee that we're paying? That's the other question nobody ever asks. It's easy to say, hey, we've implemented software package A. We're going to keep using it. And then, maybe you only have 10% of the people in the organization still using that package. But because they're still using it, they'll always say it's essential to their job. You keep paying those license fees to use that. But the question does come down to, is it still driving value? Because if it's not, you should stop paying for it and you should start moving into something else, or at least moving off of that package. And again, that's not an AI thing, but those principles still apply. So AI is transformational, right? And it's unlike any technology we have seen before. But it also at the same time is technology, and you should be looking at it through that lens from an investment, from a cost management perspective, to make sure it's providing value. It continues to provide value relative to the cost of owning it and operating it.
Yeah, great point. Looking ahead, what emerging trends in AI do you think will have the greatest impact on small businesses in the next few years, let's say?
I'm going to go a little shorter time frame than a few years.
Okay.
2025 is going to be the year of AI agents. You're probably already seeing this out there today, but AI agents, just to level set everybody here, this is not your traditional digital assistant. This is not your traditional chatbot, if you will. These are autonomous acting pieces of programming that can accomplish goals. They're usually powered by a large language model like a ChatGPT, but you equip them with tools. And these tools allow them to interact with various systems at the same time. So an example of this might be, we have a client, they do scrap metal recycling, and they take phone calls all the time. And, these phone calls, these deals are won and lost in 30 seconds on a phone call.
Yeah.
Well, when they lose a deal, people don't take time to enter information into Salesforce, not because Salesforce is bad, but because there's a typing thing, right? First name, last name, phone number, et cetera, address. What were they asking for? What did we quote? Did we win or lose a deal? If they win the deal, it gets entered in because it's worth doing, because it's got to go down to fulfillment. But if they don't win the deal, then nobody enters in the data, but then you have no tracking over when did we win and when did we lose deals. So an AI agent can listen into a call, do real-time call transcription, extract information from that conversation, automatically create a record in Salesforce, whether it's an opportunity to be fulfilled or it's a lead that was lost, and automatically do that and you not have to do anything. That's an example of an AI agent at work. That's what we're going to see 2025 be. You're going to see everybody market AI agents. It's going to be kind of like a gold rush. There's going to be gold and value to be found, but there's also going to be a lot of snake oil salesmen. So making sure you understand what you're getting and what you're getting out of it is going to be hugely important. But 2025 year, mark my words, it's going to be the year of AI agents for sure.
Wow. That's incredible. My mind's just kind of whirling at the options there for people in different lines of business. So thank you for sharing that and everything today. For those listening, Centric Consulting as a business management and IT consulting firm, you guys specialize in helping clients figure out where and how to implement AI to drive maximum business value and which managing regulatory requirements impact their industry. So can you share what's the best way for our audience to reach out to you should they have questions about integrating AI into their small business?
The best way to reach us is to go out to our website at www.centricconsulting.com. You can reach out through our Contact Us page, and we have lots of AI reference material for folks to read. That's the best way to reach us.
That's awesome. Yeah, Joseph, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today and helping us really understand the efficiencies that AI tools could create for one small business. We just really appreciate your time.
No problem. Thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks for joining us. The path to owning a business is a nuanced journey. We hope you discovered something in this episode that eases your path to success. If so, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Have a topic you'd like discussed in a future episode? Drop us a line in the comments section or send us a message on social media. If you're ready to take control of your future and start building your legacy, be sure to visit getprovide.com. You can view our resources page for more helpful tools, learn how our all-in-one financial and banking solution can help you on your path to business ownership, and pre-qualify for financing in under 2 minutes with no impact on your credit score. The Path to Owning It is brought to you by the team at Provide, with support from Slide 9 Agency. And it's produced by PodCamp Media, branded podcast production for businesses. PodCampMedia.com. Producer, Dusty Weiss. Editor, Matt Covarrubias. For Provide, I'm Corey Brown. Thanks for making us part of your journey.
Provide is a division of Fifth Third Bank, National Association. All opinions expressed by the participants are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Provide, its affiliates, or Fifth Third Bank. The participants' opinions are based on information they consider reliable, but neither Provide, its affiliates, nor Fifth Third Bank warrant its completeness or accuracy and should not be relied upon as such. This content is for informational purposes and does not constitute the rendering of legal, accounting, tax, or investment advice or other professional services by Provide or any of its affiliates. Please consult with appropriate professionals related to your individual circumstances. All lending is subject to review and approval.